that initially one would never suspect it was vaccine related because we've been told they're safe and effective and prevent whatever it is they're designed to prevent. No one connected the dots because even doctors are uninformed of vaccine adverse events. She continued with the shots, and 18 days after the third shot, she was found dead in her bed at college. After 8 years of litigation, HHS conceded by preponderance of the evidence that Krys died from her HPV vaccinations. Krys died from a vaccine she never needed. The public has been misled and misinformed about the risks and benefits of the HPV vaccine.
Please be seated. Our first witness is Ms. Emily Tarsell. Ms. Tarsell is a retired psychotherapist and former president of the Licensed Clinical Professional Counselors of Maryland. She's here today to talk about her daughter, Christina. Ms. Tarsell.
Chairman Johnson and committee members, thank you for this important hearing. My name is Emily Tarsell. I'm a retired psychotherapist and a mom. I was blessed with Christina, a healthy, bright child who grew to be a beautiful, caring person, gifted athlete, artist, honor student. In 2008, my 20-year-old daughter had her first GYN appointment. The doctor recommended the HPV vaccine, and we were told it was safe and effective and would prevent cervical cancer. We were not given any literature. We were not told of any adverse side effects. Ads conveyed a sense of urgency about getting Gardasil before exposure to HPVs. So Krys had always gotten the childhood vaccines and agreed to the shots. After vaccination, my daughter developed new conditions: joint pain, chronic sinus congestion, intermittent rashes, rapid heartbeat, dizziness on standing, unusual fatigue, and arrhythmia. We saw doctors, and Krys had an EKG, which came back normal, so we thought everything was okay. We later learned that this was the wrong test and Krys should have had a Holter monitor. No one connected the dots because even doctors are uninformed of vaccine adverse events. She continued with the shots, and 18 days after the third shot, she was found dead in her bed at college. You cannot imagine the hell of seeing your child lifeless. You struggle with the reality. How does a healthy young lady with no pre-existing conditions suddenly die in her bed? An extensive autopsy ruled out drugs, trauma, or organ issues, and cause of death was undetermined. We did not connect Krys's symptoms to vaccination initially until we discovered multiple reports from others too. My doctor advised me to file a VAERS report. I also called the FDA. They did no follow-up with me and took a year to obtain her medical records. They did one test for strep, which was negative. End of their investigation. Conclusion, cause of death undetermined. Merck, the manufacturer, also filed a VAERS report and gave a false and unsubstantiated explanation for Krys's death. Finding out what happened became my mission. I connected with other moms, experts, reporters, and with Diane Harper, the lead investigator during clinical trials for Gardasil. She was critical of the fast-track approval and of the marketing of the vaccine. I learned too late that HPVs clear on their own 90% of the time, and that cervical cancer is almost entirely preventable with Pap screening. I learned that the incidence of HPV-related cancers is very low at 0.001%. I learned it has never been proven that the vaccine prevents any cancer. And I also learned that pharma is protected by law against lawsuits for vaccine injuries. Our only option for investigating Chris's death was to hire an attorney and file a claim in the NVIC program. My super attorney, Mark Sadaka, filed our claim against HHS in March of 2010. Our world-class experts, immunologist Dr. Schoenfeld and cardiologist Dr. Eldar, were prepared to describe at the molecular level how Chris had died from a fatal arrhythmia induced by an autoimmune response to Gardasil, which caused antibodies to attack the calcium channel in her heart. After 8 years of litigation, HHS conceded by preponderance of the evidence that Chris died from her HPV vaccinations. Chris died from a vaccine she never needed, which was falsely advertised to prevent cervical cancer. She was the 23rd of 32 deaths reported in 2009. By 2023, there were 73,366 VAERS reports, including 555 deaths. Only 1% get reported. Additionally, of that 1%, almost 70% of the reports came from Merck, and 9 out of 10 of those reports lack sufficient information for follow-up. And despite this gross underreporting, FDA stated there were 3 times more adverse events reports for Gardasil than all other vaccines combined before COVID. The public has been misled and misinformed about the risks and benefits of the HPV vaccine, and to that end, I am here on behalf of Chris to raise awareness to help others. Our website, GardasilHPVTruths.com, has much documented information, including 90-plus studies. Thank you for listening.
Ms. Tarsell, as I said in the opening statement, Dr. Joe Walskog talked about just being abandoned. Can you talk about your experience following your daughter's tragedy?
There was total disbelief in what happened. I was home alone when a police officer came to my house to tell me they found my daughter dead in her bed and they didn't know what happened. It took quite a while for us to begin to put the pieces together. And I understand from the other panelists here that initially one would never suspect it was vaccine related because we've been told they're safe and effective and prevent whatever it is they're designed to prevent. When that first became evident that other people, at the time, Gardasil had only been licensed 2 years before, so at the time, there was little literature known online, but I began to connect with other parents and moms and researchers online. It's like, there's a whole lot that we're not being told. And that's devastating to not be informed, to make, and as I learned more about it, that we were never told. My daughter never needed that vaccine. She was never at risk of getting cervical cancer. The risk is very low. The HPV is clear on their own. And I'm not the only mom who's gone through that experience, and now they're also pushing it for boys, when they haven't even been able to show that the vaccine causes any cancer that's HPV related. And there's a whole reason for that, because these cancers are very slow growing, and the onset is after age 50. So they're giving it to young adolescents. It was like, I just was blown away. I could not imagine that they would have approved these vaccines and they would continue to do so. And to have Merck lie on their report. The other thing that's come up here in these conversations is people talking about the VAERS reports. That's the first line to determine if there are red flags for injuries after vaccination. And that is a very, very flawed system. I had no idea at the time. But I have learned that, as I said in my talk, that less than 1% get reported. One of the doctors on the panel said he never learned about it in medical school, and they still don't. And how can this be? This is crazy. This is the front line to determine if there are vaccine injuries. And so I've been, I feel my daughter is here with me. I'm her voice. I am trying to make her death matter. I know of all these other moms who have lost their kids through various vaccines, but HPV vaccine in particular. There were 6 other mothers I was connected with back in 2008 who had lost their daughters. Thank God I had support and the ability to find out more. And that's why I'm here. I want to share it with other people. We all want the best for our kids.
Okay.